Your moon sign is your emotional nervous system. It's the part of your chart that reacts before you think, remembers before you realize, and holds on long after your mind has moved on. Your moon explains your emotional patterns, your triggers, your attachment wounds, your coping style, your inner child, and the one emotional need your spirit requires to feel safe and grounded. What most people don't realize is that your emotional well being and your mental well being go hand in hand. The issue becomes that most people try to heal their mental health from the outside in. But your moon sign shows what's happening on the inside, the emotional blueprint behind everything that you feel, behind every thought, behind every idea is an emotion. And your moon sign helps you understand that. So, in this video, I will be discussing the link between your moon sign and your mental health. So, if you want to know more, stick around. You definitely don't want to miss this. Hello, my loves. As always, I hope that this video finds you well and in excellent spirits. So, today we're diving into the moon sign, which is the emotional center of your chart. Your moon rules your emotional memory, your subconscious programming, your stress responses, your attachment style, your triggers, your coping mechanisms, the emotional environment you were immersed in as a child, your inner child, your baseline mental health. The moon reacts before your mind has time to interpret anything. It's your instinct, your emotional truth, and your private world. We're so familiar with our sun signs and the characteristics of our sun signs and how we identify as our sun signs. And many of us now, thankfully that astrology has become a lot more mainstream, are very aware of our moon signs. Yet your moon sign isn't necessarily something that you mentally process in the way that you would your sun sign. Your moon sign is an embodiment. It's a feeling. It's a need. It's a requirement. And so when we talk about our moon sign and how it's linked to our mental health, it's not about mentally processing our emotions. It's about feeling them. It's about emotional satisfaction. It's about having our emotional needs met. And oftentimes, because society has kind of conditioned us to either gloss over these things or, at a minimum, mentally process them, so many of us are not necessarily aware of what it feels like to be truly emotionally satisfied and how that ties into our moon sign and ultimately the wellness of our mental well-being. And so the moon sign is so much more than just, okay, I'm a Gemini moon, and so I need, to talk to people all the time. It goes so much deeper than that. And that's the beauty and often the confusion that the moon provides, let's say. It requires us to take a deeper look. It requires us to get quiet. It requires us to look beyond the surface and understand not only where we're at emotionally, but also where we've come from. The moon sign has a lot to do with our early emotional environment. The moon is associated with the mother and the emotional environment that mother provided. And that ends up becoming the foundation for our lives, really. So many of the actions that adults take are really the result of unmet emotional needs, unaddressed emotions, or things that emotionally left a mark on you from childhood. And so understanding your moon sign isn't just about where you're at right now. It's also kind of a look into the past, into everything that shaped your development and how you act and react now. So here's why this even matters and what the real problem is. Most people try to fix their mental health with tools that don't match their emotional wiring. I mean, much like anything else, astrology is life. Let's just call a spade a spade. And so often we take actions or we jump on trends that have nothing to do with how we are designed. And addressing our mental health is definitely an example of that. So people try routines that exhaust them, coping strategies that don't work, advice that contradicts their needs, logic to solve emotional wounds, and most importantly, shame instead of compassion. When we enter the realm of the moon, we are entering a space of tenderness, of sensitivity, and of compassion. And oftentimes, especially depending on where your moon is in your natal chart, while logic can play a part in addressing your emotional needs, compassion, tenderness, and sensitivity are always at the very foundation of our moon sign, regardless of whether you have a moon sign in water, air, earth, or fire. Your moon sign tells you 3 things that define your mental health. The first is your emotional memory. The moon holds your childhood imprinting, the emotional stories you keep recreating. And this is important because it's not just about how you're feeling in the moment or how you're predisposed to react emotionally to a situation. Because when you're examining your moon sign, that's sort of the base level explanation, right? I'm a water moon, so I may be really sensitive. And so when something happens and I get emotionally triggered, I cry, right? It goes more than that. It's your emotional memory. So we're talking about things that happened in your early childhood. And those memories, those emotional memories, you end up recreating over and over again. And if you don't understand that, this is where we have a disconnect between what we're doing and what we need. The second is your core emotional need. This is the one need your nervous system requires to feel safe and regulated. We talk so much lately about a regulated nervous system, and that has a lot to do with our emotions and thereby our moon sign. And your moon sign can literally tell you that one thing you need to feel emotionally grounded, to feel safe, to feel regulated. And once you tap into that, I feel like that's more than half the battle. And third, your coping and recovery style. Your moon shows exactly how you react under stress and how you come back from it. Your moon sign is instinctive. Before you have the opportunity to reflect, rationalize, your reaction is emotionally based. And so your moon sign details that. So before your mind starts processing, your moon sign and your emotions act. And understanding that, I also think, is more than half the battle. Mental health isn't random. I mean, nothing is truly random, right? Your moon sign explains your inner patterns in a way nothing else does. I want you to think of the moon in astrology and just in life, period. The moon is cyclical, right? We have a new moon, waxing moon, full moon, waning moon. And so when we talk about our emotions, they are patterns, and those patterns wax and they wane and they develop and they culminate in the same manner as the lunar cycle. And this is a pattern. This is an emotional cycle that we're not cognizant of because it's our private life, it's our inner world. Yet when you examine it, when you look at your moon sign, when you really understand and embody what that moon sign represents, you're shedding light on that cycle. And when you shed light on that cycle, now you're reacting to things differently, or you're reacting to things in accordance with how you're designed. But most importantly, when you're triggered, when you are, when you experience things that remind you of the past, right? Because again, your moon sign is your emotional memory. Now you know how to deal with it instead of crashing out, or instead of sweeping it under the rug only for it to accumulate in another way. So understanding your moon sign is tantamount to not only understanding yourself, but helping yourself move forward successfully. And speaking of understanding your moon sign, let's get into the moon signs by element, right? And so we can understand what each elemental moon sign needs. So of course we begin with the fire moon sign. So this would be Aries, Leo, and Sagittarius. The emotional memory could be feeling dismissed or silenced. There's a certain expression and a certain need to express that fire moons require. And so if you experienced feeling dismissed or silenced, then that is a core memory that you hold on to, that emotional memory that you hold on to, that is what gets triggered. And it follows that your core need is expression and movement. Now, when it comes to being triggered, how you cope is you react quickly, you erupt, or you burn out. And recovery for you looks like action. Doing is what calms your system, right? You know how sometimes when you are faced with something difficult, and typically when we're faced with something difficult, we tend to revert back to our default. And for fire moons, that default is doing something. It's not like you can just sit there. You need to do something, and that can calm your system. Now, when it comes to mental health, you perhaps struggle with frustration, and frustration can lead to an emotional shutdown. So it's most important for fire moons to remember that expression and movement and action are very much a part of your emotional, energetic signature. And whenever those are stifled, that is when you can experience maybe a breakdown in your mental health, stagnation, or built up frustration. And if you don't express that, that's when you start storing that within your body. So again, action, expression, and movement are definitely a part of how you are designed. Now we move on to the earth moons. So this would be if your moon sign is in Taurus, Virgo, or Capricorn. So your emotional memory could be instability, pressure, or responsibility. Earth moons have a groundedness to them, and there is this expectation of structure, this expectation of responsibility and stability. And for you, with an earth moon sign, you need structure, you need stability. However, if you grew up in an environment that was unstable, perhaps there was a lack of resources, a lot of pressure, or maybe you had to be the adult very early on, this could be the emotional pattern that you're now repeating in adulthood. Your core need, like I said, is predictability and physical comfort, feeling physically safe and secure. Your basic emotional needs met, especially when it comes to resources like food, like shelter. These are the things that you need to feel emotionally well. Now, when it comes to being triggered, your coping mechanisms are control, routine, overwork, or just shutting down. When responsibility, I feel like one of the core words of an earth sign moon is responsibility. Whether you're responsible for someone else or someone is responsible for you. And when there is this energy of a lack of structure, or you're being tested, or you're overworking, shutting down is definitely a very natural coping mechanism. Now, when it comes to recovery, when it comes to remedying these emotional triggers or these emotional patterns, grounding rituals, but more importantly, consistency is what makes you feel good, what makes you feel okay, what makes you feel secure. Now, when it comes to the link between your moon sign and mental health struggles here could look like overwhelm that leads to emotional suppression. When you're dealing with too much, taking on too much responsibility, overworking, that can lead to emotional suppression. So above all else, if you have an earth sign, moon sign, stability, consistency, some sort of schedule, something that grounds you, some sort of consistent ritual is what you need to feel okay. And so when it comes to being triggered, when it comes to experiencing things that elicit an emotional response, those are your go-to coping mechanisms and the actions that you can take to feel okay. And now we move on to the air sign moon signs. So this would be if you have your moon in Gemini, Libra, or Aquarius. So your emotional memory is not being heard or understood. So when you have your moon sign in an air sign, vocal expression, allowing yourself to be heard, to be understood, is what you need to feel secure. And especially in childhood, if you were silenced, if you were ignored, these are the emotional memories that you hold on to, and these are the patterns that keep playing out in your life. Imagine feeling like you have so much to say, yet constantly being silenced. And then as an adult, just not speaking up, not saying anything, not expressing yourself. That can be very emblematic of an air sign, moon sign. Your core need is communication, obviously expressing yourself, being vocal, but also mental clarity. It's not just enough to express and be understood. Understanding things, particularly from a logical standpoint, is also how you feel good. When there's a lack of clarity mentally, you experience a lack of clarity emotionally as well. For you, coping could look like overthinking, over talking, or just expressing everything, and over analyzing things, right? Or just taking a very logical approach to things. And there's nothing wrong with that. Even though when we're talking about the moon, we're talking about the realm of emotions, there is a place for logic there, especially if you have your moon sign in an air sign, right? However, I'll give a perfect example, right? You're someone who was constantly silenced as a child, and now there's this fear of speaking up. And rather than feeling that fear or acknowledging that emotion, you overthink or you overanalyze, you rationalize the reason why in this particular instance you're being silenced, or in this particular instance you don't want to speak up. That's sort of how you would cope with that. So for you, recovery looks like conversation, it looks like journaling, and it looks like a mental release. It's like I'm seeing like a fly or like a bee trapped in something, right? In a container, not being able to get out, not being able to buzz, not being able to express itself. that verbal release, that mental release, conversation, talking to people, that's definitely a part of your recovery when it comes to emotional triggers. Now, for you, mental health struggles could look like spiraling thoughts, which could lead to anxiety loops, right? You are just in your head too much. And now that is like this storm of anxiety that is just wreaking havoc within you. And again, that recovery is conversation, journaling, mental release that can help quell that anxiety. And finally, we get to water moon signs. So this would be if you have your moon sign in Cancer, Scorpio, or Pisces. For you, your emotional memory is emotional abandonment or intensity. Perhaps your feelings were not acknowledged, they were minimized, or you were in an environment that was very emotionally charged. Water signs, especially when we're talking about like a Pisces moon, will swim away when things get too intense. There's emotional detachment because there could be an overload of emotions. Or you're holding on to so much emotion because there was a lack of acknowledgement. There wasn't an avenue by which you could express yourself emotionally. Your core need is not even just emotional security, but emotional connection. Part of expressing yourself emotionally is being met emotionally by someone else, right? And you form this emotional connection. And without that, you feel emotionally dissatisfied. For you, coping can look like absorbing emotions, withdrawing, escaping, crying, shutting down, swimming away, distractions, anything that prevents you from feeling what you're actually feeling. Now, for you, recovery looks like emotional release. It looks like softness. It looks like that emotional connection with someone else. But more importantly, it looks like boundaries. Water flows. And when we talk about water, we talk about emotions. When we're talking about the moon, we're talking about emotions. There's very much a lack of boundaries there. You're either taking on other people's emotions needlessly, or you're bleeding your emotions onto others. Boundaries not only helps others, but more importantly, helps you contain those emotions so you can feel emotionally sound within yourself. Now, when it comes to mental health struggles with water moons, emotional overwhelm that can just lead to exhaustion, right? It's just feeling too much intensity and just literal exhaustion. But again, that recovery for you looks like emotional release, right? If you're experiencing emotional overwhelm, you have to release those emotions in one way, shape, or form, right? And softness. Remember, we are in the realm of the moon, which at its baseline, regardless of whatever moon sign you have, requires compassion, sensitivity, and emotion. And that's very much true for the water sign moon signs. Much like everything else, there is most definitely a shadow side. And this is the part that no one talks about when we're examining the moon sign. Every moon sign has a shadow that affects mental health. So when it comes to fire moons, you can confuse emotion with urgency and react too fast or too quickly. When it comes to earth moons, you suppress until you break. When it comes to air moons, you intellectualize and rationalize feelings into overthinking. And when it comes to water moons, you absorb emotions until you drown. Now, here's the thing that's important to understand. The shadow isn't the problem. Much like when we do shadow work, it's not about completely denying the shadow side. The problem is when you deny the shadow side, when you ignore it, when you label it as bad and don't give it attention. Emotions require one thing: acknowledgement. And then they can do what they're here to do. They inform you and then they leave. To deny the shadow is not only denying yourself, but it's keeping you stuck, stagnant, and ill, if I'm being completely honest. When you ignore your moon's needs, mental health declines. Remember, those two really go hand in hand. And when you honor them, when you honor your moon's needs, emotional clarity returns. And emotional clarity is what allows you to thrive in your moon sign energy. Remember that. So when it comes to your emotional side and the shadow side, don't deny what you need. Don't deny what you feel. Acknowledge it and achieve emotional clarity. So here's a wellness tip that can help you shift this emotional stagnancy, or perhaps an emotional pattern or loop that you may be finding yourself in. A simple emotional regulation ritual that's based on your moon element. Remember, whenever we are remedying our health, it's a very personal thing. And the remedy will always be based on how you are specifically designed. And of course, when it comes to our emotional health and our moon sign, those are not exceptions to that rule. So for fire moons, move your body. Physical movement is your friend. Even if it's 2 minutes, that 2-minute movement can definitely reset your system. When it comes to earth moons, ground yourself and get into some sort of consistent routine. Get into your 5 senses. So touch things, smell good things, get warm, right? A simple sensory anchor can definitely help reset your mood and your mental health. For air moons, you need to express yourself. Talk, write, do a voice note, journal, do a video diary. Whatever it is, get it out. That will help you get back to emotional homeostasis. And finally, water moons, feel. Name the emotion before checking the phone or entering the world. You need to emotionally check in with yourself before you start going into the world and absorbing everything else from everyone else. It's important to understand that your moon sign doesn't need discipline. It needs understanding and acknowledgement. In working with clients, I've noticed that understanding your moon sign is typically where the deepest realization happens. It's like people finally understand, oh, okay, I'm not too sensitive. I just need to acknowledge my emotions more. Okay, I'm not too detached. I'm just more logical and I need to rationalize my emotions or have mental clarity when it comes to my emotions. I'm not too emotional. I just need to understand how I'm feeling and how my triggers are shaped by my childhood. I'm not cold. I'm not overreacting. It's like once you understand your moon sign, you understand why you do the things that you do. And more importantly, why you feel the way that you feel, particularly in certain situations. Oftentimes, people were using coping mechanisms that didn't match their design, right? Like if you're an earth moon, like I said, you need grounding, you need a sensory reset, but meanwhile, you're trying to rationalize your emotions. Once people meet their moon's needs, it's like everything literally shifts. And the one thing I want to leave you with is this: your moon sign isn't a weakness. Now, I love the fact that as a society, we are a lot more tapped into our emotions. We're going to therapy. We are, incorporating and honoring how we feel. But I do think that there's still work to be done there. especially when we're talking about masculine energy, right? Your moon sign isn't a weakness. It's your emotional compass. And when you honor it and when you act in accordance with it, you have this super strong emotional foundation that allows you to go into the world successfully. So needless to say, your moon sign is extremely important in terms of how you show up in the world. Now, if you want to understand your emotional patterns, stress cycles, and even healing on a certain extent, then consider taking my self-care signature quiz. It's a cute, fun little quiz that can help you understand your emotional side a little better. Okay, it reveals your wellness archetype and shows you how your chart processes emotion. So you can build a mental health routine that actually supports you. So if you're interested, the link to that quiz is in the description box below. Okay. And also, if you want to work with me one-on-one in my signature natal chart experience, the blueprint, or if you desire, to learn about my services and more about me and my company, all of that stuff is in the description box below. All right, my loves, thank you so, so, so much for tuning in. I truly hope that this information is valuable to you, and I will see you, or likely you will hear me in my next video. Take care.